Welcome to the 4 o'clock work session, Bowling Green Board of Commissioners for May 15th, 2012. We have two items on our agenda to discuss today. Looks like first up is a review of city activities from city staff. Mr. DeFebo.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple weeks ago, everyone hear me?
Keep talking, they'll adjust it.
Hello, Adrian. A couple weeks ago, City Commission asked me to make a presentation to the Commission and to the public about our activities over the last 6 years. I'm honored today to present on behalf of all the commissioners who served over the last 6 years and hundreds of our employees what we've been able to accomplish. People oftentimes try to categorize a period of time by having quick words to describe it. If we wanted to do the same with the last 6 years, we could use the words volatility, change, and redefinition. To get a full appreciation of what has occurred, the challenges the various city commissioners and employees have faced, it's important to see what was on the work agenda over that last 6 years. And if you see in the document there's been a need to, first of all, repair the damage that was done by Davis Cooper 6 years ago. Need to create a continuity of leadership, because over the last 6 years, believe it or not, we've had 9 different people serve as commissioner, 3 different people serve as mayor. You had 1 new city manager. You had 14 different people serve as a department head. And what's interesting, at this point today, only 2 of the people who were department heads on January 1st, 2006 are still here. One of them is sitting on a dais in a different role today. We also had a need to address our city finances and to deal with the impact of recession, to right-size our workforce, but also at the same time to increase the number of police and firefighters. We had to deal with the need to create jobs and help the Chamber of Commerce and others involved with that, as well as to address a mortgage bond issue at the Transpark. We needed to devise a new system to replace what was the PRO team, or the philosophy called Progressive Responsive Organization. We had the need to develop a new pay plan and make that workable, as well as to redefine our health care plan. What's also very important, as you all know, is the need to deal with what is known as the unforeseen occurrences, the UFOs, that pop up daily that all of us have to deal with. All of these issues represent a full body of work requiring action of this commission and other commissions, as well as our employees. In trying to address these issues and the cacophony of problems we face, it's important to organize it. And we tried to, over the last 6 years, whether we admit it or not, organize it by developing a roadmap. And if you look in your document, you'll see that the roadmap was written every year in the annual report to the Commission, in which we committed to 4 simple goals, or principles of action. 1 is to create an open, honest government. 2nd is to deliver the highest quality services at the lowest price. 3 is to strive to help our community compete economically in a modern economy. And I'll explain that later. And finally, to improve the quality of life. We've had 1 goal, and that's to be the best city in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Everything we have done, we believe, over the last 6 years have been designed to meet one of these 4 principles and achieve that 1 goal. As you know, and it's been said here many times, it all starts with honesty and transparency. The Cooper issue did damage our trust level and did damage the workforce, who are excellent and very trustworthy. So most of the initial steps over the last 6 years were to correct that problem. Just so the public knows, thanks in large part to Gene and others, we've collected $1,400,000 in restitution from the Davis Cooper affair, as well as collected from others who were involved in that. We created the position of internal auditor. Prior to the Davis Cooper affair, so to speak, we had no internal auditor. Now we have a group of citizens from the outside whose sole purpose it is to look at how we operate and to approve our audits and to recommend to you. That internal auditor also is responsible for keeping the eyes on our company. We've revised our zoning, our ethics ordinance, and switched how we handle our finances. And probably most importantly, we started to communicate differently to the public. We started to exploit the use of social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and BG Blog that is put out to the community so they can understand what we're doing. We started new Channel 4 programming, BG Minute. We send the annual report that you have in the back of your packet to the citizens in this community, and we stream these meetings to the public, so those who want to watch it on the computer. The second major theme is the idea of providing services at the lowest appropriate cost. Our primary goal as an organization is to provide services, and inherent with that is the need to do so at the lowest appropriate cost. We've faced a number of challenges in trying to achieve this goal. The first will involve the area of healthcare. We developed an employee healthcare committee that was successful in helping us to fix our healthcare system to make it reflect the realities of today. We selected a new healthcare consultant, changed our risk and reward profile. A number of years ago, some of the employees paid for healthcare and some did not. Now everybody is a risk and reward partner and has a share in making sure that health costs stay low. We established choice for our employees, which before there was little choice. And we redefined spousal coverage and provide additional benefits. In total, these changes recommended by the Health Committee saved approximately over $1 million. We're proud today to say that our what is known as the per cost per employee per year for medical insurance is lower in 2007, is lower today than it was in 2007. And we had to face 8% inflation. One of the challenges over the past 6 years has been to what we call right-size this community, to change the allocation of our employees. We did this in a number of ways. One, through opportunity, second, through choice, and by using a mechanism called permission to feel. Over that time, we have saved or avoided approximately $5 million in cost, benefits, and retirement costs over the 6 years. And depending on a number of years the position was eliminated, adds into that calculus. We combined 6 positions and downgraded 4. We changed how we pay 5 of our employees. They're now paid with other people's money, primarily federal government. We eliminated 13 full-time and 18 part-time positions. Our standing protocol has been to delay filling upper-level positions for extended periods of time, in one case as long as 21 months. We even eliminated 1 department, and we eliminated 2 assistant department heads. We reduced our insurance costs. We have a great workers' comp program. We have used that to our advantage to help us save money. We also have extracted savings from both our casualty, liability, and safety programs. Used it as the convention center. About 5 years ago, you reconfigured your management contract for the convention center. That enabled us to save about $750,000. We always deal with agency contributions. Over the last 6 years, we have been able to reduce contributions, almost $1 million, $989,000 for contributory and contractual agencies. We also, thanks primarily to Jeff, we have saved about $1.8 million in early debt payoff, refinancing and interest rate swaps. There's been a standing desire on all of our departments to try to do work in-house. We've saved money in both the engineering department, Parks and Rec. One of the secret things in our organization is volunteer hours. In Park and Rec alone, if you take a number of volunteer hours and multiply it times the minimum wage, we extract savings of about $22,400,000. We also have increased our collections of the business license tax, occupation license tax, through the creation of a full-time inspector whose job it is to go out in the community and find those people who are not paying their fair share. Another goal of ours has been to run a more efficient, more effective public service company. We've done this by focusing on how to do things better, eliminating inefficient operations, and creating new ways to provide services. There's many initiatives, as you can see. I think there's maybe 4 pages. I'd just like to highlight a few. We have 22 fewer non-public safety vehicles on take-home status today than we did in 2006. At that time, we had 33 people taking home a car. Today, we have 11 full-time non-public safety. One of the orders to departments is to look at being entrepreneurial. Our public works fleet division created what's called the Entrepreneurial Services Initiative, and they've established contracts with the ATF, the Community Action, Warren County Library, and the Housing Authority, and that creates itself about $350,000 in billables to the city. We, in lieu of continuing with the protein process, we reinvented that and create what's called a process action team, empowering employees from all departments to look at common problems and to offer their ideas about how to solve that. The security efforts that we're making right now were a result of a PAT team. Payroll, how to do payroll more simply, is being examined now. Part-time hiring, emergency communication for employees. The Employee Health Committee, the one that made all the changes that saved us over $1 million, can be considered a PAT. We developed and rewrote almost every policy of the city involving purchasing, fixed assets, credit card, travel. Because of the nexus of the former mayor, those policies became the model for the Kentucky League of Cities when they were questioned by the state auditors. We're fairly proud of that. We also have used other eyes besides our own to make sure we're doing a good job. We've hired WKU's Center for Local Government to examine and perform studies of various services that provide service to the public. We've examined the building division, the license division, the public works engineering, code enforcement, and the convention center, and had people who use those products report how they felt about our service, and we were rated a good. We wanted to reach out in the community, not just be about roads and snow, but to reach out to students because they are tomorrow's leaders. We started a Student Solutions program. We've had that, we've done 4 sessions. We're proud to say that a number of those have been implemented. One involving cyberbullying that was done by the police department and has been used in a number of schools. We created a senior management team to eliminate the silos or government by department and have everybody work together. I think a number of those senior managers or department heads are behind me today, and we all work to eliminate redundancy, share common problems, and work to implement your desires. It's also important to the public to let them know how good our employees are. They're not often touted. I'll just give you one example. Our public works, police, and fire departments are all accredited. That combination of the three are one of the few cities in the country in which those three functions are accredited, and the only one in the state of Kentucky. Our Park and Rec Department, for example, has been named Kentucky's Outstanding and Large Recreation Department twice since 2006. And that's just not given out until you show up. That's because of the varied programs we provide. We want to show the public that we are doing a good job for them, and that doesn't happen just by saying we're good. You need to prove it. So we got involved with the City and County Managers Center for Performance Measurement to measure and benchmark ourselves against other cities across the nation. Also, as part of that process, we, on a biannual basis, ask the citizens of this community how well we're doing in serving them. The last rating showed that 77% of our citizens felt that we were doing a good job. And finally, even though it seems insignificant, we've conducted seeker shopper analysis of a number of departments and had citizens call to make sure they were responded to appropriately. And it's insignificant to some, but big to me. We started lunchtime phone encounter service, so that people who are on their lunch hour don't have to wait for people to come back from lunch. We always have someone there to serve them. Overall, I think we've been able to, with the Commission's lead, cut costs, increase accountability, and improve services. We've had a major rock in the road. All of us come downtown for the goal of having an agenda of progress. After I get done, we're going to talk about an exciting initiative for the TIF. All of us have an agenda that we want to achieve. Sometimes that agenda gets interrupted by the UFOs, unforeseen occurrences, and we had a major one in 2008 with a national recession that helped to transform this whole organization, not only then, but into the future. We cut $3,628,000 from the 2000 and 2010 operating budgets, while absorbing CER rate increases, pay adjustments, and doing some highly prioritized capital projects. How do we do this? We've been trying to do this since day one by right-sizing our workforce and departments. Every time there's a right-sizing, as you can see from the number, it pays dividends in future years. We reallocated more work to existing employees. I know it's not popular, but almost all employees have more responsibility. We reduced the size of wage increase and had to provide what we could. We reduced our health care costs. We extracted savings from workers' comp and insurances, and we better collected taxes from those who didn't want to pay their fair share, and we also did some refinancing. I think if you want to summarize it, there's something you should be very proud of. Over the last 6 years, the Board of Commissioners have served should take great pride in their ability to cut taxes, absorb the impacts of a national recession, cover 100% of the debt load on the Bowling Green Ballpark, and 50% of the bond payments on the Transpark without increasing taxes, cutting services, or depleting the reserves. That's not a small achievement in any stretch. There's little doubt, at least in my mind, especially coming from the steel land that I came from, that people live in Bowling Green because they can get a good job here. And one of our primary responsibilities is to make sure that we help create new jobs. There's 7 reasons why I think we do that. First is we are a low-cost government. One fact alone helped prove it. We are essentially operating our city government today on less revenues than it was operating on in 2007. Second is that we have kept taxes low. by not taking the growth rate for property tax to keep pace with inflation, and also by cutting the occupation tax. I think we're one of the few, if only governments, maybe in Kentucky or that I know of, that actually cut taxes. And we did that in 2007. Third, as we did today, we have invested directly in those companies that want to come to Bowling Green by giving them a job incentive. Since 2006, we've had 25 job development incentive credits totaling $4.4 million. We've helped create 1,998 new jobs in 6 years. What's interesting is not only did we help to create the jobs, we increased our incentive. At one time, the incentive was negotiable. Now we give 1% of the 1.85 of our occupation tax. In other words, for every possible 1.85 realized from a new job, we give $1 back to that company for 10 years. Fourth is that we directly pay for general obligation debt. One of the issues we've had to deal with is how do we make the Transpart viable given the financing structure at the time. We stepped forward and assumed a mortgage bond, and along with the county, split the cost of that yearly mortgage. Since 2007, we contributed about $4 million toward Transpart debt. We also give about $125,000 a year to business to market us throughout Kentucky and the world. That's about $900,000 for marketing support since 2006. We give money to special projects. For example, Convention and Visitors Bureau, we have allowed them to use $800,000 in discretionary funds that at one time were used for legitimate city purposes, but we felt were important to foment tourism development. We've donated to Kalanishi. We provided land, for example, to the Chamber of Commerce. We help refinance Diddle bonds. Every time a private developer has come to us to partner with about new roads, we've done it. We've built new roads with private partners at Modern Way, Western Avenue, Greenwood Lane, Patton Way, Fields Drive. And finally, we've allowed BGMU to use our preferred borrowing status. Finally, and probably one that's not readily known, is that we help in the continuum of job development. Jobs just don't appear. They have to be created and grown. And that starts at multiple levels. For example, we've given the Housing Authority $282,000 for minority business enterprise development, $75,000 to community ventures for micro enterprise, and $313,000 to the ICC Center for Incubator Support. Again, after I'm done, we're going to talk about the TIF. More than a decade ago, city and county leaders came together, and along with DRA and others, to talk about what we can do to restore the downtown. And thanks in large measure to the leadership of the City Commission, this idea has moved from an idea to reality. Over the last 6 years, we have either spent, committed, or aggregated $60 million for the development of downtown. A couple examples. We provided $5.8 million in funding for Circus Square. We provided $3 million money along with other sources, for the demolition and relocation of tenants in the area that became SkyPack in Block 7. We provided $594,000 to the DRA over a 6-year period. It's an interesting figure. We also have done more than just a straight downtown. We've expanded it and done some creative things. We created the Lee Square project to start a new vision of urban living downtown, a new housing downtown. Few communities are building new housing downtown. We created a whole block and cleaned up the blight in the area. I know there's one member that will be happy. We built a new world-class skate park that added to the face of our downtown. It's next to the beautiful Bowling Green Ballpark. We gave almost $400,000 to L&N Depot to help them become a viable tourism venue in its own niche market. We spent $5.7 million on Coomer Little for a new park and rec program. We even made free wireless service available in most downtown parks. Probably most importantly, and what we're going to talk about later, is the development of the TIF. In 2008, we agreed as a city to participate in a signature tax increment financing arrangement for a 50-block area of the community. We'd agreed for a 30-year period to give up 80% of all new city taxes raised in the TIF district. Since that date, we provided about $170,000 in 80% money to our partner, the Warren County Downtown Economic Development Authority, aka Chapter 58. We also did something I believe is courageous. At a time when the bond market fell apart and the signature TIF was in peril and in balance, we stepped forward and assumed the cost for the bond from the new ballpark to make the TIF continue to be possible. It's also important to note that our partner, Warren County, also stepped forward. I think in 6 years or 20 years, we've come a long way from that seminal question about what to do about downtown. Just look around and you can see what is accomplished. You have a vibrant performing arts center, a number of new recreation centers, including a skate park. What I believe is a world-class urban park in Circus Square, by far. You got 2 new parking garages nearing completion, and a new chamber building, and the center of it all, the Bowling Green Ballpark. It's a significant achievement in 6 years. People won't live in Bowling Green or any community if they don't feel safe. I think that goes without saying, if they have a choice. One of our commitments that over the past 6 years, and this goes way beyond 6 years, and it's probably been a commitment of this organization forever, is to support public safety. Over the last number of years, I don't want to go through every one of these different changes, but it's important to note that at a time when we were right-sizing our organization, we added 29 new firefighters and firemen, and that comes with a good cost. We did a great deal of remodeling in the police department. We added a new state-of-the-art shooting range. This has been a time for the fire department. We added a new station. Just recently you saw in the paper where we had a problem with our 800 megahertz communication center, and thanks to the backup facility that we built at Greenwood, that wasn't an issue. We should also take pride in 2 things that have been on the burner that are now on the front burner. The first involves the 800 megahertz. That went from something we've been talking about to something we're doing. And there again, we're partnering with the county. We did new pictometry and did it in a creative way by becoming partners with those for the product. As I said, we built an alternate 911 center. And we've completed 3 phases of the wireless, community wireless, so that our police officers and firemen, fighters can communicate and use technology while they're out in the field. There's a lot of other items on your list, but I don't want to go into all of them, but there are some exciting things. I'll mention a couple. We are partnering with WKU on Cyber Defense Lab for digital forensic investigation. This is a whole new area that is becoming more and more important in law enforcement. We've been quietly partnering with the county to upgrade our CAL system and make those digital so they don't break down on the old way. And finally, we're proud to say that our firemen have improved the number of and the volume of inspections that we do on commercial properties in the city. It's also important to note that we were able to settle without much of a problem. If you read the paper, what Louisville's going through, the firemen's overtime grievance, we settled that quietly, and it involved every firefighter, and it cost us about $1.4 million. We adopted a new pay plan in 2006. Although it may not be significant to some, every employee, or almost every employee, received some form of pay raise every year since 2006, even when it was very small. We increased accreditation pay for police officers and assignment pay. We created what is known as an appreciation day for employees, because without the employees' service, what we do as an organization couldn't be possible. We've increased our life insurance from $20,000 to $50,000, and if you die in service, that increases dramatically. We also increase dental coverage for all of our employees. You, as a deliberative democratic body, make policy. And over the last number of years, you have done some new ordinances or some resolutions that affect the whole community. One is the TIF district. You created that TIF ordinance. You did a citywide workplace smoking ordinance. You approved the gas franchise agreement and decided to give up excess funds to the welfare center. You worked with Warren County to renegotiate your cable franchise. You passed legislation governing the sale and use of fireworks in the city. We amended our policy about speed humps within the city. We developed neighborhood traffic control policy and developed various ordinances for both temporary signage and outdoor billboards. People, when they live in a city, have certain expectations, and one of the primary expectations is to have good parks, great streets, and safe sidewalks, and to see a police officer most of the time. So that in order to provide those services, we have to make investments. It's been a tale of two cities. From 2006 to 2008, before the recession, we had one of our largest capital improvement programs on record. During that time, we paved miles of streets, built new facilities, expanded the greenways, purchased life skills, even repaved alleys. And we built a Broadway curb. A lot of that changed when we had the recession and dealt with it. To the Commission's credit and to the employees' credit, at no time did we stop investing in the big three: roads, sidewalk, and the big four: stormwater and public safety. At no time. It's interesting, we also added 3 new services that weren't here before, 2006. One was the private retention and maintenance assistance program. A couple of people benefited from that. We did a comprehensive stormwater program and a citywide sidewalk program. In the last 6 years, we have invested or allocated more than $50 million in capital improvements to the community. I won't go through all of those. I'll just identify a few. We spent $7 million to pave streets. We spent $3.9 million to build new sidewalks in the community. We participated in the expansion of the greenways, not all our money, most is not our money. Today you could walk from Scottsville Road and almost make a complete circle on a greenway. That wasn't a reality 6 years ago. We even put our own money in when we added our Center Street Loop. We built a new park at the Crossing subdivision, so we added a park. We built a new bark park. It's hard to say, with Hill's Pet Foods. We also completed the old Morgantown Road. right at the height of our deepest financial problems. And as you know, we've invested over $500,000 on Covington Stream stormwater and South Park Drive stormwater project. And for some of you, you'll remember that we completed the Turner Court realignment to help with the traffic at the Moss Middle School, UPS, and Hills. This is a body that has to always think about the future. I'm almost done. I know we have a lot to do. During the past period of time, we approved the comprehensive plan. Not a mean endeavor at all. It took about 2 years. We also have been active in road planning, as witnessed by the recent money that was released by Frankfurt for our area. We even developed our own thoroughfare plan to figure out what roads to make priorities in the city. We took a study of Smallhouse Road and are right now working to implement a solution at Cave Mill and Smallhouse Road. One of the things that I'm personally proud of is our investment in the west side of the community. We have a part of our community that is statistically poor, more diverse in nationality and heritage, and plagued by an aging infrastructure more so than other parts of the community. We created what is known as the West Side Initiative, gave it a fancy name, but basically it represents a body of collaborations, one of which resulted with the Hispanic community into the creation of an international liaison position with our neighborhood community services. We approached HUD about using some money to make some investments in Pettigo Park, Parker Bennett Center. As a result of a neighborhood stroll, you'll now see 2,100 new feet of sidewalk along Boat Landing Road. We partner with Hands on building Independence Place, Scholar House. We put new sidewalks along Double Springs from Beach Bend Road to Route 185. We put new lighting at Lampkin Park, started a futsal soccer program. We've done a lot, and we've partnered recently with Habitat for Humanity. It's often said that you can't judge a community by its best neighborhood. You judge it by the efforts made in all its neighborhoods. So I think you all should be proud of those efforts. Finally, and my goal is to be done in 40 minutes. I'm almost there. It all gets down to values. We use a value system when we spend money. We use a value system when we decide to pass ordinance. We use values every time. And here I think has been our values over the last 6 years that we've tried to operate this city for our citizens on. First is that we're here to serve. There's no other reason. If we're not here to serve, we should go. Our goal, if we're going to serve, is to provide the best services at the lowest appropriate cost, which does beg the question, what is that? We're always trying to refine that. We can only be the best if we strive to commit to continuous improvement. We can't declare ourselves the best and then never prove it or never desire to get better. In my mind, I think department heads, employees, all problems have the same priority. Because for that person who calls you, the introduction of government at that moment, he don't want to hear about TIF or about this or about that. He wants to know what you're going to do about his pothole. So every problem in our mind is the same. No problem is too small. I hope that's been clear. Noisy is not better. It's just noisy. Ideas do make a difference. Committees never solve too much. You can't prove that you're good until you measure it. And this is my own personal favorite. We have a great community. We should be very proud of it because people who lived other places know how special this is when they come here. We have to create jobs, especially with our tax structure. If we don't create jobs, our future of the community is going to end as we know it. And I think Mr. Nash taught me this one. Sometimes it takes courageous leadership to affect a change rather than just to be against something. I think that's has currency with us. And finally, just get it done. So that's, in my mind, our last 6 years, what you all and all the employees have accomplished. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. DeFebo, I say this not as much for your benefit, but for the benefit of others, that Kevin really didn't want to do this presentation. Kevin often thinks that it's going to be perceived as somebody patting themselves on the back. But we sit in this chamber, and sometimes we sit with you, and sometimes we sit with other people, and we're always under the scrutiny of the television camera. And a lot of times what we find is that we're kind of like making sausage up here, and we just keep grinding it out until we come to some good conclusion, or at least some conclusion that we feel is good at the time based upon a majority vote. And a lot of times people walk away, I think, with a negative perception of government because it's not always pretty, and it's not always happy, and it's not always fun to watch it work. But I think recognizing not only the ugly side of how things get done, or the difficult side or the debate side of how things get done, I think it's important that we recognize what actually gets done. Sometimes in the midst of the battle or the debate, that gets lost. And I would be remiss, me and Kevin have had our fair shares of disagreements. Including today.
All right.
This very day, and had our fair share of disagreements, that as he spoke very little about himself. He talked about department heads, which deserve a great deal of credit. He talked about the commission. He talked about city employees that are out on the streets getting these things done, but he talked very little about himself during this presentation, because that's who I believe Kevin to be. But the reality is, you don't get as many pages, 24 as I count them, of accomplishments in 6 years without good leadership. And I think we've had good leadership for the 6 years. I missed the beginning of this presentation, thanks to, Paducah. I'm glad I live in Bowling Green after visiting Paducah today, but I don't know what was said at the beginning of this at the very beginning of this presentation, but the 6 years that we're measuring is the 6 years that Kevin DeFebo has been the city manager of the city of Bowling Green. And so he's not going to stand up there and take much credit because his personality is to pass it on to others. But as I said, I would be remiss, and I think the commission would be remiss, if we didn't recognize that all these great accomplishments have happened under Kevin DeFebo. Nothing more.
Anyone else?
Well said.
All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Our next item is to continue our discussion for the revenue sharing agreement related to the WKU Gateway to Downtown Bowling Green Development Area and the development project proposed for Block 6 in the 5th District. I think we've had a lot of questions, a lot of emails, a lot of revisions. So we're down to... Not if I can help it, but if we have to, we have to.
Give me a drink then.
I lost Mr. Brooks there. Oh, there he is. I see him now. All right, Mr. Brooks, would you mind stepping forward? We'll go ahead and put you in the ringer first. Or we'll do it if we have a preference. I know there's been a lot of discussions and again, revisions. I know that there were a lot of issues that were brought forward at the last meeting, and you've worked to address them. Would you run through what revisions that you've made so we
Well,
know we're
I
all on the
will
same
kind of
page?
talk about what I think the important ones are briefly. We've made some changes based on feedback from city staff. We had one of the suggestions which I heard, I think, for the first time the last time I was here for a work session was, could we, when I say we, the authority, or could this revenue sharing agreement take the blocks for which TIF revenue was undesignated and designate that to the city? And we have done that. In fact, I'm going to give you a document that's very similar to one that was floating around before, which you may use.
Thanks.
Which is a block by block. Here's what happens with the TIF revenues.
I've got
And it
that.
shows the changes. You got that? Okay. We had it last time. It's changed. Really not a whole lot, but
Thank you, sir.
Maybe that'll help us. The revenue sharing agreement, as you know, is a total redraft, and it's done by Roger Peterman at Peck Schaefer, and it is. If you're reading it and didn't read the previous one, you might find this a difficult statement to believe, but it is more easily understood than the previous one was. It's a complicated set of facts when you're taking revenue from each of these mini blocks and chopping it up. But the spreadsheet which I gave you there shows the changes, and in many cases, of course, there are no changes. But since we were here last time, a significant change is that those undesignated blocks have now been designated to help the city towards GEO bonds. Now, you know that those undesignated blocks are blocks that are not under development right now, so the prospect of tons of TIF revenue from those blocks is not so good, but still there's the capacity for development and for a little bit of TIF revenue, particularly the state revenue, which might help the city. The idea, just sort of globally, of TIF district, of course, is that you would use TIF revenue to stimulate development. And so it was important to us as an authority to be able to use TIF revenue from those undesignated blocks to stimulate development if we get a project for those developments. And we have retained the ability to do that sort of on a case-by-case basis. So that's in terms of the economics for the city, and that's what we were focusing on last time. That's an important change. Another significant change since last time has to do with the TIF revenue that would be generated by the Graves Gilbert Clinic. Those of you who were on the commission when we did this last time know that we hoped that a major project down there was just on the horizon, and so we had always had in our revenue sharing agreement the ability to use Grave Gilbert generated TIF revenue for an approximately $18 million building down there. That building is not imminent. I don't know what their plans are, but it's certainly not like they were before, and we've been in discussion with them. So we have taken that and reassigned it to administrative revenue for the authority. Again, those of you who've been around, and gosh, we've had lots of discussions with city staff, how the authority is ever going to have a regular budget has always been problematic, at least until state TIF revenue starts to flow. The previous draft that we were here on 2 weeks ago basically took 10% off the top of each block for our administrative expense. That sort of 10% off the top from the TIF revenue from each block is still there, but in front of it, and this is a major thing, in front of that now is the ability to use the revenue generated by Graves Gilbert Clinic. So that's I think that's a good thing for all of us. And for example, all those other blocks where the city is at least somewhere in the pecking order, it's now far less likely that there would be any administrative expense taken off in front of your priority.
Before you leave administrative expense, and I understand that it's been redefined in here to be the approved budget, or the budget that the city approves and you present.
It is redefined to be the approved budget. It's more than that, Mayor. I mean, it includes debt service, the New Markets tax credit expenses, and some debt service that's always been in there. But then when we get below those things and talk about what we would all sort of say normal operating expenses, yes, it's defined as the budget approved by this commission. That's right.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, well, as far as I'm concerned, those are the highlights. And I'll be happy, or Mr. Gorman will be happy to. He's far more articulate than I am, but we'll be happy to try to answer questions.
So we talked about, if I go through some items that were brought to our attention through the email, we talked about Graves Gilbert, we talked about the unencumbered blocks of 1, 2, 3, 4B, 9, 11, 12B, 13, 15, 16 that now goes
Yes.
into
Correct.
to help pay for the project. But if there's $3 million, a project of
At least $3 million capital investment, then we could take the money from that block for that project.
which would of course be approved by us through a subdeveloper agreement.
That's right. That would come before you.
And the same thing would be true if Graves Gilbert came back to the program in
Yes.
theirs.
And I guess I should stress on Graves Gilbert, I mean, if they do a large project, that I think almost inevitably means a lot more TIF revenue. So it's not that we're unwilling to support a project if they have one, but right now they don't.
Okay.
Sure.
Jim, what about the nursing school? How does it relate to this conversation we're having now?
Well, nothing has changed on the nursing school side. It has always been the case that the medical center is entitled to 60% of the revenue generated down there for that project. It's of course, I'm not involved directly in that, but it's my general understanding that that's pretty close to going on the street to sell some debt for that. So that, I think that's going to happen. The other thing, Mr. Denning, and maybe this is what you're asking, that is based upon a projected annual growth at Commonwealth Health Corporation of 3.75% annually, and of course that tells us how much TIF revenue that will generate. That is, I believe, historically a pretty conservative number. So then the question becomes what happens when they grow by, say, 5% and generate more TIF revenue. And in that case, we, again, split it up 60-40, but the percentages are swapped, and we get 60% for our other uses, and they get 40%.
Kevin, speaking, is that schedule done? We haven't seen that schedule on our attachment.
I'm sorry, Jim.
The Dankton College nursing schedule, I think it's Schedule 1. I don't think it's referenced in the document, but we don't have, we just have a blank.
Showing the TIF revenue that they're going
Yeah.
to generate. I think probably they're working on that pretty furiously right now, because I haven't talked to them in about a week, but I think they're going to market with bonds, I hope, soon. I shouldn't speak for them, but I mean, they're working on it.
Now, let me understand, as you know, Kevin, you've known me for years, I get confused a lot. The hospital project, the nursing school project, what amount will they have to pay to the master developer for their project?
Mr. Denning, with respect, your question assumes something that's false. They won't have to pay anything. The master developer is paid based upon capital investment, but the nursing college doesn't owe the master developer any money. So it won't affect their project. Their project won't be hit at all. There has been a suggestion floating around that somehow that project would be hit up for master developer fees. That is false.
But if the hospital builds another section, the Joe Denning addition to the hospital, the master developer will receive a fee for that project.
Or any other capital investment in the TIF district, yes, sir.
But not from the person.
But
But-
not from that business. Not from, it's actually the authority that owes the money and has to find some way to get it paid. And that has always been the case.
And that's 1% of whatever the capital
Yes.
investment is.
Yes.
Up
And
to
there's
200 million.
And there's a, yes.
Do you include that in your admin? Or where does that come out of? Will that be in your budget or?
I would say that could be in the budget going forward, yes. I mean, there's no immediate, obvious source to pay the large amount that gets paid at the end. We've always managed to do it, and I think we will again. But we wouldn't, you're never collecting that money out of a project, so the College of Nursing won't owe anything for that. And if Commonwealth Health Corporation does other projects which can be aided by TIF revenue generated by that project, they will not have to pay the master developer any money.
And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, that obligation ends December 31st, 2014.
I think that's
Or
right.
300 million, if we get lucky enough to get 300 million
Yes.
first.
Oh, the obligation to pay the percentage?
Yes.
You're right. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Mario.
Kevin, I did have one quick question to follow up on what he said before I let the rest of them. You anticipated a 3.75 growth rate to help fund the TIF revenue, or for the TIF revenue in the College of Nursing. If that does not appear, the other blocks are not obligated to come up with
No,
those
that-
funds. It's simply, that's why you've sectioned off different
That's exactly
pots of
correct.
funds to support different projects.
That's exactly correct.
Anyone else?
I have a few questions about, if we're back to what we're looking at tonight, the RAP.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's a couple of things I have it as page 2
Of what?
of the subdeveloper agreement, assignment and assumption of rights and obligations under the master developer agreement.
Where are you looking
Yeah,
at?
we're, what's it look like in the front?
Is it in one of these?
Should be in the master developer agreement and towards the back, I think.
If we do that, can we make sure, we're totally done with the revenue sharing agreement, right? No other questions, no other comments? Because it's tied to this, but it's a little bit different. I just want to make sure we're done with this one item before we
I
go to the
doubt
next.
that we're finished, but we'll
Okay.
set it
I was
aside.
going to say, I wouldn't
I
promise
said
that,
aside
but
as
we'll
well.
see.
All right.
I
All
wouldn't
right.
promise.
Thank you.
All right. I still haven't found it yet.
Did we confuse you, Billy? 'Cause you-
Page 2 of the subdeveloper agreement, right?
Page 2 of the subdeveloper agreement.
It's among Alliance Mills Family Realty LLC, City of Bowling Green, and the authority.
in this one.
I'm
Is
ready.
that
I've
it?
got it. I know everybody else wants to.
Item F.
Item F.
Yes. Page 2, it looks like this, Joe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
We okay?
yeah, I got it.
Kevin, do you have it?
I have it.
Okay. Explain that section to me where it talks about city treasurer in 7 days and sublease and not having to come back to the city commission on agreements, and I don't think I understand that.
City staff had, no, I think we may have talked about this a little bit last time, I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is that the city has economic exposure risk in this transaction, and so the city wants this building to be completely leased up and wants it to be leased up at as high a rate as possible. And the question is, well, do we get to look at that? Or is it just, who's looking at that? And this, in the short way of saying it, Mr. Waltrip, it gives the city the right to look at it. And so we've already got parameters of how much rent is supposed to be paid and how much CAM is supposed to be paid. But this gives you the opportunity, and frankly, we didn't necessarily want to. To us, it seemed a little awkward to have to come before the city commission at a regular meeting every time we're negotiating with a tenant, but it did seem fair for the city to have a look at it. So what we included here was that that Jeff can look at it, and obviously he's going to do that in good faith, and he can't unreasonably withhold his approval. But if he just says no, then we do come to you. So that's what we're doing there.
Can I explain a little further? And Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, make sure I understand. I did talk to bond counsel day 2 to try to get a little bit of understanding of how this is going to be done. This is difficult. This is not an easy thing. Warren County has, I think, passed an ordinance authorizing up to $22 million in industrial revenue bonds to pay for everything, for all the RAP, the outside part, all the inside part, capitalized interest, the $1.5 million reserve fund. That will pick up everything. Right now, due to the fact that there's only a couple of tenants that have committed, they don't need to issue $22 million. So my understanding right now, they're going to issue the initial one is 15.6, which will pay for the outside wrap, will pay to complete the interior for the 2 tenants. We'll pick up, I guess, some capitalized interest and $1.5 million in that reserve fund. This is almost like a construction draw bond issue. They have authority to go up to $22 million. Right now, they're stopping at 15.6. As an example, I think it's going to be Mills Family Realty is going to be looking for tenants. 6 months from now, 9 months from now, they get a tenant who comes in and says, we want 15,000 square feet, but it's going to cost, I don't know, $1.5 million. I'll make up a number. $1.5 million to come in and finish the interior of that wrap for that new tenant. This language says, before they can do that, they bring this language says to Jeff for initial approval with some information about that tenant, about how much they're going to lease, who the tenant is, what they're going to do. This language is proposed, and I'll let you all debate it. Personally, I wouldn't want to be in Jeff's shoes to do that, but basically says he's got the initial shot at saying yes or no to that tenant. If he says no, then the Mills Family Realty can appeal that to the Board of Commissioners to see what you all's opinion are. And the main reason we want it is not so much as who the tenants are, but obviously every time they add money to that debt, then the city's financial obligation to make that lease payment goes up. And they want to make sure that the city has some awareness that's going up and some ability to say whether we want to do that or not. Does that help?
Well, it helps somewhat. Is the lease, the lowest amount that the lease can be is $12?
It's 12.
So it wouldn't be, if it's 12 rather than 15, obviously there'd be more of a need for city. I don't know how to say it. It would make these figures that we have not correct.
12 just doesn't cover you as well as 18 does.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
But I think the main reason we want to look at it because that increases the debt as much. I mean, I'm not sure the revenue side is as important maybe as to make sure we knew the debt was going up.
The point is you'll be bringing a lease, and you're probably interested in who it is and their credit worthiness and how much lease revenue is going to generate. Yeah, all that stuff. How much TIF revenue is it going to generate? But you're also interested in how big a draw are they going to make to do the tenant improvements to fix the space up. But you'll see all that.
And that's, I know there have been some mention somewhere along the line of just this commission approving the 15.6 million and not approving the other. Had there been? Did I dream that last night?
I think the only thing I know about that is that that will be the initial draw, and so you are implicitly approving that. And yeah, the use of the other 7 will come before you because the leases will, or at least they'll come to Jeff.
At least everybody hopes it does.
Yeah, we hope to bring a bunch in soon.
I guess I have an issue with this part. I don't know if it's shared by anyone else about a staff member having that responsibility to do that. And Jeff is very competent, but I can see him approving it, and then 6 months down the road, 3 commissioners say, "What in the world have you done?" I see that as a real problem for that position. And as I obviously trust Jeff, and Jeff may find a $2 million a year job tomorrow and leave, and then we have someone else, and obviously we would hope to trust that person, but I just see some real problems with this part of it. And again, I don't know if no one else shares that, then we can move on. But
I guess my question and concern is Warren County is paying for the RAP. That's paid for.
They're borrowing the money to pay for it, yes.
Yeah, okay. Our 2 companies move into the respective spaces that they've already contracted for or going to contract for.
Yes.
But they also have the responsibility of renting out, or leasing out, the rest of the RAP.
Yes.
And if they do not rent out the rest of the RAP, other than their companies, then they have got to pay an amount back to the city for what?
At the end, in the first question, just to be precise, the county is issuing bonds to pay for this. They're not borrowing. The
Yes,
county won't be obligated.
I understand.
And the private developer will own this building when the bonds are paid in full. But if the city has had to pay money to service that debt, however much money the city has to pay, the private developer has to reimburse the city before they can get their deed.
I'm sorry, Billy.
at the end of 20 years, 24
Yeah.
years,
Mhm.
something like that.
20, I think. 25.
I know that we're dealing with a lot of what ifs in this. The bonds haven't even been issued. Obviously, we don't know what the interest rate's going to be. We don't know what the payments will be, and all of those. There's a lot of what ifs, and I suspect that's part of a business deal. But what if? And I just met the Millses before this, so I've explained to them that this has no reflection upon them whatsoever. Any questions that I have, I've only heard good things about obviously the business and them personally, so this has nothing to do with it. But at the end of this time period, let's say they owe the city, or the city has put in $4, $5, $6 million on this, and at the end of that period of time, people walking away from property every day now. Now, I don't know what 20 years are going to hold, but what if the business decision is made that they would owe they would owe less by walking away than paying what they owe to the city? Could they do that?
Yes, they're not obligated to pay the money. They're only obligated to pay the money if they only want to own the building.
If they want to own the building?
I guess I would say that I'm not aware of any building in downtown Bowling Green that's had any kind of maintenance at all that has not appreciated at least modestly over the years. And so this is a $20 million building. One would assume it would have greater value then, but even if it's only worth 20, and taking your scenario, they can own it for 5. I mean, think it's quite likely that they do that. I mean, I'm not going to predict the future nor say there's zero risk, because we talked about that.
And I guess that's where I'm at, and I see, obviously I see different things, but I see risk on the part of the city that we are putting future city commissions into having to deal with. If everything does go south, we're putting them in the responsibility of having to deal with that. And that doesn't make up if we have to take, let's say we have to take out a couple $100,000 out of the general fund in one of the best case scenarios. Then again, we're taking that money out and hoping it's going to be replaced in 20 years. So I guess that's where I'm having some problems with this. And again, I think I'm in the minority. And what I said about the mills is the Chapter 58 folks and the people dealing with this alliance, I know that obviously trying to put together, I'm not anti-growth. I respect what decisions this body makes. I think everybody is trying to make a decision that they think is best for this community. But I just have some questions about entering into an agreement with so many unknowns and so many things that could happen that again could strap our general fund for funds that some unknown amount. Doug.
Well, Commissioner Waltrip, I appreciate the thoughtfulness and thoroughness of everyone on this board and all of the staff and the things that have gone through. And I would just like to say this. You know where I stand. This project's incredibly important to the city of Bowling Green and the county of Warren for one reason of bringing the jobs. We tend to forget about that, but the 150 jobs that'll be located down here to change this. But we'd like to answer every question you have, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness on it. But before I go too much further, I would like to first introduce Chris Clinton and Ed Mills. And HitSense, I laughingly say in 2000 I was fortunate enough to have a committee that didn't know what they were doing and voted me the Small Business Person of the Year in Bowling Green. And at that luncheon, two 17-year-old kids were at this luncheon, Chris and Clinton Mills, and I met them and they sat at my table. Since then, I've proven the unwiseness of the chamber voting for me and the wiseness of whoever voting for them as the Small Entrepreneurs of the Year. They have surpassed anything that anyone would ever think. They have taken off with this company and very proud to have HitSense and that. And what I've said is this agreement that the city's looking at doing is generational in the change that it's going to do for our town. Because it's not just about HitSense, and it's not just about what's getting ready to happen right now. It's about the changes that will happen for my grandchildren and other people because of what they're doing to transform this town. But before we go too much further, I'd just like to have Chris, do you want to come up, or have Chris Mills just come up and say a few words on behalf of HitSense, if that's all right? So, okay, raise your right hand.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I think you have some great questions, and I just want to be able to address them in any way that we can. Our business is very unique in Bowling Green because we do a lot of business outside of Bowling Green. We do a lot of business in other states. We do a lot of business, especially recently, in other countries. So with our business, we are bringing a lot of revenue into the Kentucky in general and in the Bowling Green area. And the more we've grown and the more successful we've been, we've really enjoyed being in Bowling Green because of what it has to offer. But I do feel like some of the problems that we run into with just any city in general is they spend a lot of time trying to bring different companies in from outside, and they don't spend any time on trying to keep the companies that are already here. We've showed substantial growth. We were ranked one of the fastest growing companies in the United States recently on the Inc. 500. And one of our problem areas for us has been the fact that we are writing software that nobody in the world has been able to do. We have people in India trying to knock off some of the things we do. We have people trying to reverse engineer some of the projects that we've made. And we're right here in Bowling Green, and we are honestly doing things that nobody else is doing. And kind of a proof of that is we've just been awarded 3 Webby Awards last week, which is the highest honor for an interactive agency that you can get. And we've done some research, and there's not been very many Kentucky companies that have ever even won a single Webby, let alone 3 in 1 year. So we do feel like we have a lot to offer to this community. And what this building does for us is when we go to New York and we go to California and we tell people we're from Kentucky, we get a lot of people that just kind of laugh and say, well, okay, well, we need to work with a New York, you guys are in Kentucky, you don't even have computers there. So kind of what we strive on with that is that we have, Bowling Green, Kentucky wages compared to California wages. And so we're doing work that people in California can't do, and we're doing it for half the price. So it makes us very competitive on the global scale and then just nationally. And we're just trying to portray a very high-tech company. And to do this, we really need a building that can actually show that we can showcase to our clients so that people know when they look at us, this company knows what they're doing, they're successful. Not only is their work showing for theirself, but their actual facility is showing for theirself. And we've been very lucky in the Western Kentucky Research and Development Building located in the Old Mall, but we have outgrown that for several years now. The space is definitely not optimal for us, and we're looking at kind of what we've been calling this Class A space, but it's more than that. It's a high-tech environment. It's going to, what we're trying to do with this building with the retail down below, we feel like it really can change downtown Bowling Green. And we want to be able to continue to bring in employees and use this facility to continue to bring people in from other places so that they're not like, okay, well, I'm going to the Old Mall every day to work. I'm going to this high-tech building that's an icon in Bowling Green that is something different. And I think that's what's got us very excited about this, and that's why this particular building is so important to us. So, if I may answer some of your questions, I think one of the things you brought up is about bringing the lease payments in front of the commission. And the problem that we've generally had with that is we're going to be negotiating rates with these tenants. And if we bring it to the commission, then those are going to be public record. So let's say we ever do, for an exception, get somebody at $13 a square foot. Somebody can just access the public record, see, okay, well, we've got somebody at $13 a square foot. Why am I going to pay $15? Why am I going to pay $18? So it really is going to hinder our negotiation skills by putting those things publicly. We do like the idea of the city staff being able to look at this because we feel like, they're going to know the credibility of these people. We are looking at, a big investment in any person we bring in. We're looking at $45 to $55 a square foot for the regular office space, and almost up to $100 a square foot for the restaurant space. So we need to make sure that these people are going to be creditworthy and going to be able to be a long-term tenant. Because if they come in there and then they go out of business in 6 months, that's not going to help anybody. And that's why we like the idea of the city staff to be able to do it. But we can't hold up the process. We have to make sure that it's a fluent process. And if we have somebody on the line, that we can get that lease executed and get things moving. Because you know how everybody is. If they want something, they want to get it done, and they sure don't want to wait for the next Tuesday or the next Tuesday after that to be able to get something approved.
In regards to that, it has 7 days for Jeff to do that. What if Jeff's not available? This may be a Kevin or that. What if Jeff's not available? Is it automatically approved?
What we were trying to do is make it so that no matter what, the process would not get held up. We're going to be as straight as we possibly can be, and I'm all about getting the contracts as close as we possibly can be. But I can tell you, if we send Jeff and he's on vacation for a week, then we're going to work with him to do that. The reason we made it 7 days is thinking 5-day vacation. If as long as something comes up, we would at least have a couple days to look at it or to email it. And if Jeff's like me, he checks his email.
If Jeff approves that himself, is that an open records issue? Or is it not?
Actually, I don't think Jeff approves it. I think he would just have to decline it if he thought there was something wrong with it. The idea here is that if we're bringing a tenant in then, we've gone through the credit process. We've made sure that and what we're looking at from you guys is to help us if we run into a situation to where we might be getting into an agreement with somebody that is not, is not going to be a good fit for the building.
I mean, to respond to that question, make sure you do understand, if Jeff gets something and looks at it, it becomes a public record. I want to make sure everybody understands that, and there's no confusion about that later. If he has it in his possession, once the 7 days are up, it's a final document and it's subject to disclosure.
Wouldn't it be better to come to a closed session, and we have special sessions
Well, still
quite
gonna
frequently? Is it?
Anytime y'all
Job
approve it, it's still going to be
development
subject to disclosure.
Can't we do it like we do it with the developments and the JDIP? Today we had a meeting. We're going to meet in executive session tonight. From the executive session, after it's been discussed, it's sunshine and voted on and done. So it is confidential until the point of vote.
But I think the concern I heard a minute ago was if somebody in the public knows our lease rate,
Correct.
that will become public. If you bring it to
Correct.
us, that's going to become public at some point.
Yeah, because we don't want to set a floor at any time when we bring something to you guys. We want to be able to continue to negotiate. So I think it's going to be very important to. I was not aware that the process we set up wouldn't make it a public record.
It will.
I guess that's one of the issues when I read this that caused me to pause just a little bit, wondering why
Yeah.
this, when it is going to be open if he gets it.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, let me just address that. I frankly thought that you could use the economic development exception to protect it, but even if not, it's better to send it to a staff person than to have it on TV. So it's still better to make, if a prospective tenant to at least go look for it and make an open records request, as opposed to literally negotiate the lease in a setting like we're in right
But a
now.
closed session wouldn't be subject to that, or did I miss that somewhere?
I think the final document is what Gene was saying, and he may be right about that. And
Well,
I'm speaking for the authority and not for the Mills family. We're not married to 7 days. It could be 8. It could be 6. We're not really. Jeff seemed like the logical staff person. It could be the city manager or his designee, so that if Jeff's gone, Kevin could. We're not that hung up, I don't think, on who it is. Just a administrative process for staff to look at it.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we're here at the work session before tonight, obviously, too. But I'm, as everybody knows by now, very simplistic. But if it says 7 days in a contract, it seems to be that's 7. So it seems to be that needs to be worked out if we do it. And again, if this is only an issue for Bill Waltrip, it may not be. And I obviously yield to the majority.
If you were to make it the city manager or his designee, then surely somebody will be here during that 7-day period.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that might be an internal decision for you folks.
Yes, unless it's written into the contract, then it's not an internal issue.
That's not his position.
It does. So, I think we could just update the contract to, we could send it to multiple people.
Yeah.
We don't have, our main thing there is you guys have information, and if you could get us, if we're going to get into a bad deal, it'd be nice to let you guys look at it beforehand.
Okay. And I understand. I'm just saying that when there's a contract that we enter into today, another commission in 4 to 6 years, if they're looking at something, they may not know the intent, they may not be privy to the discussion that we're having, and then you end up with issues that end up going to court.
I think the thing with this is that it's only for the people that are going to take draws on the tenant of improvements. Right. So this is not going to be a 4-year process. If I had my way, it's going to be a 6-month process, but that's obviously being. So what we're looking at here, is maximum is going to be a couple years. So this is not an ongoing thing for 25 years. This is just if somebody's going to take a draw.
And I guess part of this is going to sound contrary to what I just said, but it seems like that if this body approves the entire funding, a lot of me says, lease it and it's your all's deal. You're the sub-developer, and I really don't care to see it. But but
Yeah.
I hadn't thought through that either. I don't know. I mean, we've already approved the money, so I don't know. And I don't know what anybody else is. Slim?
Well, I guess we've already approved the money, but I guess one of the things that I would want Mr. Meisel to look at, or Mr. DeFebo, or whoever the designee is that whatever company is going in there is going to significantly contribute to the backstop payment that we may have to make. So even though it may be approved in its totality this evening for them to draw it down, I like the additional step being there that somebody from city staff, whether that's Mr. Meisel or Mr. DeFebo, has the ability to say, this doesn't look right to me, which then doesn't kill the issue. It just puts the responsibility back on the mills to bring it forward to the city commission so that we hear it at this level.
I guess, go ahead before I open my mouth about your position.
I hear a couple different themes. First of all, it's important to know that we could be exposed up to $21 million. So if we accept that as your theory, why even have Jeff approve if we're exposed? So if we know we're exposed, is this second part just a due diligence to help the Mills family? Okay, if you're saying that you understand that we asked for this second bite at the apple, staff did, right? It was me. Because I thought, look, we know we're exposed for 15. We weren't sure beyond what that was, whether it was 21 or 18, so shouldn't the commission determine if we should increase that exposure? If you're willing to accept the possible exposure up to 21, this is not necessary other than to be a help to the Mills family. Does that help?
Well, it helps, and I think in what Slim said obviously makes some sense, but if you can only go down to $12, anyway, I mean, you have a leeway in there that has already been granted.
Correct, and the $12 space is limited. So
Right, okay.
it's only for a very small amount of space that we can do that.
Okay.
So it's not like we could go and lease the whole building
Whatever.
out for
Right.
12.
I understand.
We weren't sure if what the ultimate exposure was until late today, that it could be as much as 21. Now, we're pretty sure we got 15 locked down with some degree of argumentation about exactly how much indemnification there is. The other 7, we thought you needed another bite. Now, if you're okay with the 21, will this help with the due diligence to be the eyes and ears of the Mills so they can get the right person in there, if that's what you're asking us? Because it's different than this. Because what this says is, if the other theory that you don't know it's 21 is that Jeff Meisel is making a decision about how much debt the city government of Bowling Green should take. That's a dangerous position. We just had a 2-month issue over fees for Park and Rec. Now we're going to give Jeff or Kevin or Katie the leeway to determine $7 more million of debt, possible debt. So it all depends if you're okay with knowing that the ultimate exposure could be 21, hopefully 0. I guess that was our point. We didn't know what the ultimate exposure was. And as you saw, we were all trying to lock us down at press time. This came in at 340. So if you guys are okay with 21 million being the ultimate possible outside exposure, and we asked for the additional blocks because we thought we needed more money to go into the debt coverage.
And if you don't mind if I talk on that,
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody understands is that the $15 million number is just to finish out our space and the other tenant space. If we're not coming in and drawing more of that money, that means we're not bringing any more lease revenue. So, the idea here is for us to lease the entire building, and as the building is leased, that's what's going to service the debt. If you ask me, we're going to draw all 21 million because we're going to lease all of the space. If we're not drawing that money, then nobody's making any money in this deal. Nobody's going to be happy. So that's going to be a part of this process for sure.
And I just want to suggest too, if you don't want approval, I mean, you could always just look at a simple notice if you don't want, if you know the ultimate thing is 22 million, just when they lease 10,000 square feet, just have them send notice, we've leased 10,000 square feet to ABC Inc. Don't even put the rate amount in, but we've incurred $1.6 million drawdown to pay for it.
Correct. Intended improvement.
That's good, 'cause
I'm okay with the notice part again. I don't, if you all are leasing it, I'm proud for you.
Correct, yeah.
The other thing while we're at it, before I forget, and this may just be, again, a Bill Waltrip thing, and my peers up here are getting sick of this, and Bruce is going, hurry this along, but I won't.
Just stop apologizing, just ask you questions.
Well, I've got to apologize to it, and I've got to ask him in the way that I want to, not the way you want to. All right, now that we got that out of the way. The $3 million, you say you're going to give us TIF revenue from the other blocks at one point, and then you're going to say if it's a certain amount, you're going to take the TIF revenue away. And then you say there's not much TIF revenue to be had anyway. I don't see how that's an advantage to us to sweeten this deal for the city. But again, I might.
We asked for that.
Are you asking us or are you asking the city staff?
I'm asking
I'm kidding.
whoever's
of
at
course.
the microphone. If that's
City
you, I'm
the
asking
city
you.
city staff requested that. And just to give you an idea of what that means, the block where Booth Fire and Safety is generates X amount of TIF revenue. And the amount it generates over the base right now is thankfully a little more than it was back then, but it's not much. I mean, it is what it is. If that was to be leveled and a new development come there, then obviously that would produce much more TIF revenue than the base that was there. Mm-hmm. Then that's an opportunity for us to then renegotiate. But right now, anything above the base is going right to the city. We designate all those blocks for that money to go to the city. And if there's tremendous growth from those existing businesses, that's a way to increase that. But to answer your question, the only way that it's going to be taken back off the table is if someone were to buy that property, level it, and start over, but that new project would be much greater than what's existing right now. Now, there are some blocks that are designated that could have a new business move into them, Commissioner, and take off and could generate some TIF revenue, and that's just gravy is what that amounts to. But we did that. The city had requested that, and we want to do everything we can to protect the city, believe it or not. And that's one way to do that. But the only way, again, just long story short, the only way that's going to happen is if one of those existing blocks has a significant change to it, that we would have to take that off the table to renegotiate with a new developer. Okay. Is that?
No, that does, and whomever it came from, whether it came from the authority or the city staff, again, that doesn't seem like that sweetens this deal. And again, the staff may have other ideas too.
Just for sake of disclosure, we just asked for more blocks. We didn't ask for what blocks. These were offered blocks. Okay, we just thought you all needed more money to bring to the table to cover your exposure, the better off you are. Yeah. So these blocks were tendered by you all, and we didn't negotiate which blocks.
But sir, we offered every block we had available.
Okay.
So I guess we should have held something back, but we just gave everything that we had available for that. Yes, sir.
And I'm not trying to be disagreeable, but I'm just saying that, again, it doesn't seem like that does anything for us, or does very little for us. But again,
it's just, I mean, Commissioner, I guess it'd be your definition of little if it generated $20,000 in a year. Again, it's 20 grand we don't have right now. I know where you're coming from. That's not the deal to finish this whole thing off, but it's just one more. It's one more way that we're, able to show good faith, if you want to put it that way. But we are willing to do to be able to help out any way we can, and it was asked, and we fulfilled that requirement.
Can I ask a related question? On the 4 blocks Doug dedicated us, 4A is the Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. 5 is SkyPack. They weren't there before, we know. 8 is BGMU, and 10 is the ballpark. We know ballpark was brand new too. Is the state going to count? The state's going to have a base, I guess, on BGMU that they'll keep. Will there be a base on the Chamber of Commerce, or is it counted all brand new? Do you know how the state's going to look at those 4 blocks? Any idea?
Well, BGMU will definitely have a base, but again,
I know it's all built into your projection numbers,
right.
But can you tell us how that was?
I should know when the chamber was built.
It was built during 5 and 6.
Okay, so it would have a base.
It has a base.
Okay.
Yes.
It would only be the incremental growth.
Only the incremental growth. And again, not to speak for BGMU either, but I'm sure we all are aware of their incremental growth every year, no matter what.
Yeah.
They definitely have grown considerably.
Okay.
So.
What else?
This is just contract talk, I guess, and I'm just not familiar with the term. Or it's mentioned several times in this about unreasonably held. Is that just something that someone can debate later in these things? It specifies something, then it comes back and says which, and the one I'm looking at, which consent cannot be unreasonably held. Is that just a
It is a very common term in contract language where you have a situation where someone is given the authority to approve an action, and the standard is that you won't unreasonably withhold it. If you don't say that, you could disapprove or approve the transaction just on a whim. You just say, no, I don't like it. But this standard it's not a real high standard, but it's a reasonableness standard.
But the court later may look at whether it was reasonable or unreasonable.
A court could look at that.
Okay.
Heaven forbid we would be in court arguing
But
about
again,
that.
that's
yes.
reason it's in there. All right. The only, I had asked Jeff last time to see what this did to our credit rating, or if it did anything to our credit rating. Have you all been privy to the Morgan Keegan? I think
We shared
maybe
all
you've got it.
documents.
Yeah. We saw that.
A couple of items in there, again, give me pause. One of them has to do with the summary, and it's just very short, if I may read it. And this is from Richard Dulaney, Managing Director, Morgan Keegan. Jeff can explain later if he wants to. He said, while the project is undoubtedly an attractive major addition to the district and complements numerous other new projects built in recent years, we believe that the revenue projections may be overly optimistic and the city's financial exposure may be understated. We also believe that the addition of this obligation places a significant unknown burden on the city and could take away valuable resources that are used for essential public services in the community. Lastly, we believe that the addition of this obligation without proven, reliable, long-term offsetting revenues could very well jeopardize the city's stellar A2 credit rating. Just if there is a response, I don't know.
I would have a couple comments to that, and I appreciate you bringing it up. One, we were a little surprised that we gave 5 scenarios based on the occupancy, and they took the worst case scenario and played that out. I think you can hear from what the Mills plans are that worst case scenario is never going to happen. That was the first thing. Second thing, I was a little taken back personally that in the worst case scenario, when you take those numbers, they appear big, and but again, over 25 years, they're talking a worst case scenario of maybe $4 to $5 million from the city, and that's out of the next $2.5 billion worth of city budget, and 25 years worth of city budget is probably actually more than $2.5 billion, and so I can't. I mean, maybe I don't know enough. I just can't imagine that dollar amount would affect the city's credit rating. I was a little. I'm telling you. And I had it back here. I just was a little surprised that it was in there. I did send a response back, and I don't. need to have to go through each one of them, but when I read that, one of the things that happened was those growth numbers were not ones that we were making up. We took those right from the rolls, and for that, we were never asked where they came from or whatever, but yet those tax numbers that we used are taken right from actual documented growth that they had. You know, I mean, all those ones that are involved have had the historical numbers. We are not projecting. The last thing that we want to do is say, if we can only have 7% growth, this thing will work. That's way too much pressure, and we would never want it to happen. You know, again, I go to the thing with, back, I guess, Commissioner Waltrip, to the scenarios. I mean, they didn't pick the best one to decide. They didn't pick the middle one. They just picked the worst one. And again, that might be what they were asked to do. I don't know. But I was, you know, I was a little surprised about that. You know, I guess that's. I mean, I don't know if I've answered your question, but again, we floated GO bond for the ballpark, and it never affected our credit rating. And the last thing we want to do, I think it's a legitimate question to ask, would this happen? Because if the answer was a definitive yes, that makes a difference. But it's not a definitive yes. It's a maybe in case, if the worst happens, this might happen. I just didn't think, when I read it, I was a little surprised. But again, they have to protect themselves. They're not going to come out in either way. But to answer it, I think we used data that was supplied from the city of Bowling Green, given to us about the growth projections, and those are legitimate growth projections for the last 5 years. So everything that we formulated was based on those. And I don't know if that answered it or not.
No, it did. Jeff, on this, there's another part in here that talks about if we obligate ourselves to the $21 million, that it could cause our bond rating to go down, which would mean that we would pay more for future indebtedness we took on through bonds. Is that an accurate statement, or?
Yeah, there is no guarantee either way. If the $21.5 million of IRBs are issued, there's no guarantee that as soon as you all sign on that garage lease or whatever, that they're going to come look at us and ding us for it. And there's no guarantee that 5 years from now, if we have to make a $500,000 payment, if things don't work out, the economy goes south, as it has the last couple of years, that we have a totally different board sitting up here. This is an annual renewable lease. Totally different. 5 people decide we don't want to be involved in this. They back out, vote not to pay it.
And we would hope that wouldn't happen.
We would hope that would not happen, but the city would at that point be in default. There's no guarantee that Moody's would come in and ding us at that point either, but there's a moral obligation with this annual renewable lease, and I think that's the way to look at it. And the question about the 0% scenario, the 0 other tenants, that's just the scenario that we presented 2 weeks ago. That was that colored one-page summary that we did. And what we know now, as far as we know there's 2 good tenants coming in. We don't know who else is coming. We don't know whether or not we're going to get $360,000 or $380,000 a year in TIF money. Well, I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I mean, that's what we knew. That's what we know today, and that's what I put on that summary 2 weeks ago. Rick Kelly took that same summary, and I sent that to you. He ran it at the different scenarios, and even he came back with a little bit of a shortfall in the 0% scenario, and I sent that to Morgan Keegan, and I said, "That's the one we've been discussing. So you want us to run all 5? No, I don't know that we need to." But Rick ran it, I ran it. I thought, well, let's let them run it and see what they come up with. And that's, I guess, how the 0% scenario got selected, because that's what we know today. We know we've got 2 tenants. We don't know who else is on the way. We don't know what TIF revenues are going to generate.
And the 0%,
and here we are. So
the 0% that Rick did showed 129,000 possible shortfall.
I think so.
Or 120
for first year,
whatever it was.
not terrible.
But again, one of the things, if I can interrupt, and I know that's what, it's not like someone wanted that only to be
And
given
I didn't
there.
direct them to
and
write
don't-
what they
yeah.
wrote in the letter.
Yeah, don't misconstrue. I wasn't saying that. But what I had an issue with, they said the data was optimistic, and yet never asked where the data came from or what the backup was. We had it wasn't optimistic. It was factual. I do have an issue with that. We gave them, here's the numbers, and then never found out how we came up with those numbers. So I mean, so I don't know if I would describe them as optimistic when we didn't know where they came from, and that was the thing there. But I see your point, Jeff. This was not a decision where it's like, oh, just do this. I know what they did, and if you looked at that, but again, not anyone over here is assuming we're not going to lease something out, and I wouldn't be here today, I can tell you, if I thought the only two people are the tenants that are going in that building today.
This person with Morgan Keegan, tell me again, they're their city's financial advisor, is that their?
Yes.
And how long have they been the city's financial advisor?
We've been using them probably since Kevin came in, since 2006. We bid it out when he came, and we've been working with them on our bond issues and all that. They sell bonds for us, get it all done, along with Dirk Bedar for our bond counsel, put it all together.
The only other thing I think that I have is that on the, not HitSense, but the second group, they're committed to 5 years.
Yes, 5 years, the 5-year option, but they're contractually, that's the longest they can sign. But again, all I can say to that is when you see what they're going to do, it's a pretty sizable investment on their part as well, and they have no plans to go anywhere. So.
Well, again, you can tell that I have some reservations, and there is risk for the city, and there are a lot of unknowns. You know, the general fund takes a $1.6 million hit each year for the ballpark, 1.3 for the ITA, then the possibility of this, and then I guess if some other, and again, my apology, Mayor, is that, you know, a great group, and have no reason not to believe it, but, you know, the next private investor comes in, wants the city to back something. I don't know where we stand. I don't know how that would work, but I appreciate it, and you're very articulate in what you said. And if this didn't go through, Bill Waltrip, I guess, would be run out on the town if you all went someplace else. And I'm just being very candid with you. It's not you all. It's the responsibility. If it was a Bill Waltrip thing, I usually am very optimistic and want to be a team player, and let's get this stuff done. But the issue has to be that I'm not just Bill Waltrip up here. I'm representing taxpayers who have the same questions I've had. There's questions out there that many more than probably what I've been able to poorly articulate up here today. But again, my issue is not with HitSense. I suspect that this probably will pass, and I wish you all the best of luck. And in the event it does, please lease out everything at $20, $25 a square foot. And right now, that's all I have.
Mr. Nash, did you
Yes.
get something?
I need
Sorry.
a bottle of water just listening to you.
Well, at least we didn't say we need to drink like Joe.
That's right. Actually, this has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I'm leaving, and I want to apologize for that. But my daughter's soccer awards ceremony started 20 minutes ago. She has soccer every time we have a city commission meeting, and I haven't been to one soccer event this year. And I promised her I was going to be to this one, and I'm late. So it's not that this issue isn't important, but we're not going to take a vote here. And so I promise that I will get caught up on any questions that are asked after I leave. But if you've ever met Presley Nash, you don't want to be late or too late for anything you promise you'll be there for. So I apologize. You know what I'm talking about.
See you in a few minutes. Ms.
Just
Hill.
one other thing,
Goodness gracious.
and I will be finished. The issue that you brought up about another city commission, if this commission does do this, again, I would hope that whatever city commission follows us would follow through with whatever commitment that is made here. I talk about the moral obligation, and I would hope that whomever's sitting up here, if this has gone through, that would be very important for a future commission to do.
I think they will as long as the money's coming in, but there's a stop somewhere, and I don't believe, I've been one of the ones from day one who's had some problems about downtown. You don't have to laugh, Doug. But I will have to commend Mr. Gum and David for what they have done so far to make downtown a lot better than what it was when I was growing up. And sometimes we have to take risks. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. There was 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby the other day, but only one could win. So I don't have any complaints as of right now. We have this on the agenda for tonight.
There was a revised thing sent here, so if you want to substitute some elements of that into...
Well, I think about every agreement was revised today.
Okay, so do we have copies of that?
They've all received copies.
Yes, there is copies available if you want to vote on it.
I guess that's all for me.
Ms. Hill?
I just want to go back to what Commissioner Waltrip said on page 2. I would like to know what we need to do as a city to protect the city for future draws, but as well as protect the mills as far as confidentiality is concerned when they're negotiating these leases. So what should we put in this section, I guess, Gene?
Well, like I said a few minutes ago, I think if you're okay with just a notice, just have them provide us notice, with everybody to understand that ultimately we may get to $22 million. That's going to be hopefully the cap, because that's all the county has money for. But if you're satisfied with that, I think just a notice that they can send the city manager or the mayor or whoever that says we've signed a lease. I don't think they bother telling us who, with ABC Inc. to lease 10,000 square feet. Don't have to give us the rental amount, but say that this is to build this out, we had to draw $1.4 million. So the debt has been increased 1.4 to $17 million.
I just look at Jeff nodding. If that's the intent, from our staff point of view, if you know you're exposed up to 21, our job is done. If you want Jeff to participate with the mills to provide extra due diligence, we're happy to do that as a partner, because the more we can be involved in helping them pick good tenants, the less exposure we have. The big issue from staff point of view is knowing what the final terminal amount was.
And we know that.
And while we get, don't anybody remember, while we get the lease payments to make our payment, I guess the county, I mean, they have a dog in this fight too, because they get the incremental revenues.
I would rather just have the notice. I don't think that we have to
We can work that out.
everything.
And does that protect them as far as confidentiality? I don't.
Well, the notice they give us will be subject to disclosure if somebody wants it, but then again, it's not going to have rental rates in it.
Okay.
So we would, the private developer would notify city staff, hey, we've leased X. It's already done.
It should be Jeff, because he is the
Okay.
person who's going to calculate what we got to cover, if we have to cover anything, right?
How long, company name, how many square feet?
Everything's fine. The big issue, Doug, was did we know that there's possibly up to 21? That's all we want.
Yes, sir, that's fine. That's fine. I just would hope tonight, I just want to let you know, tonight, personally, I'd like to be the last time we talk about lease rates going forward. And I mean that in all seriousness, because it is we don't want to hamstring the developers of this project, this private investment that these guys are making, to let them make sure they're maximizing the use of this building. And trust me, they have a very, very significant investment
And
to
if
make
I've
sure it's
erred
done the
in
right way.
if I've erred in some way in this,
No, you-
I apologize immensely.
No, you haven't. No one's watching this. I'm kidding. No, you kidding. You haven't, Commissioner. I think it's all been good points and great questions to get on the table now, and so we want to make sure we take care of the commission and the city staff of what needs to happen from here.
I guess it's just a logistics question. There will be a trustee assigned that these monies will go to rental annually or whatever, and the city would receive some sort of notification. Hey, we have received X amount this year, and X amount have been paid and applied to the IRB payment. Yada yada yada.
Correct.
The city does not owe any money, or the city owes X amount due by.
That's exactly.
Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Trustee will be none of that. It's not to Chapter 58. Trust me, it goes right to the trustee. All rents, all that.
Would that be a banker of some sort?
Because these revenue, the rent and the TIF revenue that pays this IRB goes to the trustee.
I mean, Chris won't even see them.
Directly to the trustee. That's right. Right. So there's no opportunity for, the tenant will pay the trustee. So I think you're exactly right.
And yes, you would get a yearly statement, which would be I'm sure something will be entered in the record every year at the commission as well. Here's what it did. Here's what all the expenses. Correct.
All right.
So just we work this language, just a simple basic notice, like 2 sentences.
So let's be sure about that. If we're going to do that, we'll take that new paragraph F, I think it is, out, and we'll just provide that the private developer, upon having leased space, notifies Jeff of the amount of space they've leased and the amount they're going to draw down for. Okay.
All right.
And I guess just on our side, what we would like to ask is if we do send you something, and this doesn't have to be in any of the agreements, but if we do send you something and you see an issue with it, to just let us know. We don't need an agreement, but just when you see it, I mean, that's the reason we're sending it to you, is if there's going to be credit issues with that person, to just let us know.
I'll try.
Okay.
Now, I was going to say, we saw amended language there, some places you can't rent to, so if we see that, we'll let you know.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
While I'm thinking about it, do we have time?
Go ahead.
There
Just don't
was
apologize.
a paragraph that I saw in some document, I can't remember which one, exclusivity, where, let's say, a direct competitor of HitSense appears and wants to lease some space. Is that off the table, or how does that work? I thought I saw some language on there. Say they're willing to pay us $25 a square foot. You going to turn them down?
Yeah, that was only for one instance, and it wasn't for HitSense. It was for the other tenant.
Okay.
Which is rare that would happen in this
thought it was-
town. However, they just are.
I'd never.
Surprising when you get enough lawyers involved.
Okay.
What happens?
All right.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not either, Gene.
Anyone else?
Your Honor, just wanted to recognize, I can't think of her name, but the honorable attorney that represents Alliance, and Mr. Gum and David Butler are right back here in the back.
It's Jamie Cox, right? Yeah. So.
Ms. Cox,
Yes.
we're glad to have you with us. Those two there, help them out all you can.
Another comment I would add, and I'm looking at the debt service projections, is that if you rent 20% of the space over and above the 2 tenants you're talking about, that the city ends up with $1,400,000 at the end of the lease.
Correct.
Only 20%.
On 20%, correct.
We earn that. Or we
It's provided to us through that, yes.
40%.
20.
The next scenario?
20.
Is there a 20% in there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we can apply that towards the baseball bonds.
Correct.
The 40% revenue figure that you talk about ends up to be $4.8 million. Is that the figure you have?
I was just looking at Rick's summary sheet here on the front. He didn't have a 20%. So.
I went to the long one from the bond councils.
Oh, okay.
So the risk is there.
Okay, yeah, I trust you.
But there is a significant reward.
There's a significant reward for
the
just a
thing,
minimal additional lease. Okay, nothing else from anyone? We'll return for, sir?
Did you ask Bill?
He told me he wasn't going to ask you more questions.
I took my microphone off.
We'll return at 7 o'clock for our regular scheduled meeting. Thank you for coming.